The old Faulkner mansion sat atop a barren hill, its windows dark and blank, like the eyes of a long-forgotten doll. The townspeople spoke of its checkered past only in hushed whispers. Lena, a young journalist, arrived in town seeking tales of the unknown. The Faulkner mansion, with its tales of vanished families and eerie sounds, was a story she couldn't resist. One evening, as dust settled, Lena, driven by her insatiable curiosity, decided to venture inside the mansion. The setting sun cast a reddish hue, enveloping the mansion in an atmosphere of mystery. As she stepped over the threshold, the air turned cold, hinting at secrets that lay buried within. She moved from room to room, each space telling its own silent story. In the main hall, a grand clock, long silent, began to tick as Lena passed by, as if awoken by her presence. The floorboards above creaked, hinting at unseen footsteps. In one of the rooms, Lena found an old diary, its pages yellowed with age. It belonged to a woman named Clara Faulkner. The entries spoke of love, betrayal, and a shadowy figure that Clara feared. The last entry, dated the night Clara vanished, read, "He knows my secrets. The shadows grow longer, and I fear I may not survive the night." Suddenly, Lena felt watched. The feeling of unease grew. She began to hear faint whispers, echoing Clara's words from the diary. The mansion seemed to come alive, its dark history unfolding around Lena. As she delved deeper into the mansion, Lena stumbled upon a room sealed off from the rest. Inside, she found paintings of the Faulkner family. One in particular stood out, a portrait of Clara. Her eyes, through just strokes of paint, seemed alive with fear. Just as Lena was about to leave, the door slammed shut. Panicking, she tried to open it but found it jammed. A shadow moved across the room, its form indistinct. A whisper, "Closer now," sent shivers down her spine. "You know my secrets." Using all her strength, Lena managed to pry the door open. Without looking back, she fled the mansion, the whispers fading into the night. Back into the safety of her car, her breath ragged. Lena looked up at the mansion one last time. In the window of the sealed room, the faint silhouette of a woman stared back, her gaze pleading and full of sorrow. Lena left the town that night, her story unfinished but forever etched into her mind. The Faulkner mansion continued to stand, its secrets kept, waiting for the next curious soul to venture within.
In the summer of 2023, a renowned local photographer ventured into the heart of the dense woods, attracted by the misty sunrise over the river, hoping to capture a once-in-a-lifetime photograph, instead discovering something far more chilling. There, drifting along the river's current, was a body. The corpse was a young woman, eyes wide and lifeless, staring into the gray morning skies. Her golden hair fanned out in the water around her pale, bloated face. Detective John McLean was assigned to the case. The victim was identified as Jenny Richards, a bartender at a local tavern. The killer had been merciless, throwing her body into the river, but leaving footprints in the mud, hastily covered with a handful of branches. The autopsy report revealed a chilling fact. Jenny's death was not due to drowning, but strangulation. She had suffered a dislocated jaw and had dark, finger-shaped bruises encircling her neck. Looking into Jenny's past, they discovered an unsettling pattern. Jenny had recently broken up with her boyfriend, Tom, and he had a history of violent outbursts, a trail of restraining orders and court dates. Witnesses at her job reported seeing the two in a heated argument the night before Jenny's death. The suspicion fell heavily on Tom. However, he remained defiant, rebuking any accusations. Tom had an alibi for the night of the murder, his friend vouching that he was at his place, drowning his breakup sorrows in alcohol. They needed physical evidence. Remembering an old forensic technique, McLean asked the coroner to run a UV light over Jenny's body. The black light unveiled the faint fingerprints imprinted on Jenny's throat. The prints matched perfectly with Tom's. A search warrant for Tom's residence was secured, where the investigators discovered a pair of muddy boots that matched footprints found at the riverbank where Jenny's body was dumped. Armed with the incriminating evidence, the police arrested Tom. Despite his denial, his alibi was found to be a lie, his friend confessing to lying under Tom's coercion. The court ruled that Tom had killed Jenny and discarded of her body in a rage, sparked by their breakup and fueled by alcohol and anger. Tom was sentenced to life in prison without parole, where he'd never see freedom again. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. This is Blood and Breakfast, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.
On an unforgiving winter night in Riverton, under the spectral glow of a bar's flickering lights, sat Jack Crawford. He nursed his whiskey like a balm for his soul, grappling with the impending doom of his fractured marriage. As a man of wealth and influence, his public facade was a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within him. In the same bar, Ethan Montgomery, an unassuming teacher, sought refuge from his own storm. The burden of his wife Rachel's escalating medical bills threatened to submerge his family into an abyss of debt. Under the heavy veil of their desperate circumstances, the two men found themselves face to face. Friends in their youth, their lives had diverged. That night, their paths intertwined once again, not in camaraderie, but in shared desperation. Their conversation flowed, fueled by whiskey and desperation. Jack's failed marriage to Olivia threatened his wealth and social standing. In contrast, Ethan found himself on the precipice of ruin, brought about by Rachel's debilitating illness. Their conversation took a grim turn when Jack presented a horrifying solution to their mutual plight. "We can help each other, Ethan," Jack proposed, his eyes holding a chilling glint. "We can make them disappear." From that night, an insidious plan began to form, seeping into their lives like a deadly poison. Jack would stage a tragic accident to end Rachel's life, while Ethan would orchestrate a fatal incident for Olivia. They wove their plot with alarming precision, their correspondence hidden in anonymous letters, cloaked with code names and cryptic language. They moved like ghosts in the night, their treacherous actions shielded from the world. Under the shadow of a moonless night, Jack executed his part of the pact, slipping a lethal dose of poison into Rachel's nightly medicine, weighing heavily on his conscience. As he exited the house, Jack felt the enormity of his actions. In contrast, Ethan sabotaged Olivia's vehicle to introduce a catastrophic failure, ensuring it would occur on a notorious stretch of road known for its fatal accidents. The day came when Olivia unknowingly embarked on her final journey, leaving Ethan behind, now a man burdened with a dreadful secret. Riverton mourned the tragic losses of Rachel and Olivia, oblivious to the malevolent undercurrents that connected the two deaths. Detective Andrea Hayes, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for detail, sensed something amiss. Her pursuit of the truth led her down a twisted path involving Jack and Ethan, their shared history, and an eerie web of deceit. As Detective Hayes dug deeper, the consequences of their monstrous deeds began to suffocate Jack and Ethan, their alliance fractured under the strain of paranoia and fear. The climax of their despair came when Ethan, unable to bear the crushing weight of his guilt, confessed to their horrifying pact, thrusting Jack into the merciless glare of the law. The courtroom reverberated with the heinous details of their vile pact. Riverton was left shaken as the horrifying depth of their betrayal was laid bare. Jack and Ethan were convicted for their crimes, leaving their families shattered and the town forever marked by their atrocities. Thus, the tale of Jack Crawford and Ethan Montgomery remains a chilling testament to the devastating paths that desperation and greed can carve, permanently scarring the soul of Riverton, their once idyllic hometown. In the aftermath of the trial, Riverton was a town forever changed. The residents had lost their innocence, and the scars left by Jack and Ethan's betrayal were etched deeply into the community's psyche. Their once serene hometown had become a place of haunting whispers and lingering shadows, the echo of their horrific crimes still resonating in the hearts of its people. In the cold solitude of their prison cells, Jack and Ethan were left with nothing but the bitter taste of their regret and the damning silence of their thoughts. The ghosts of their deeds haunted them, whispering endless echoes of guilt and remorse. As they grappled with their solitude, their sanity teetered precariously on the brink of despair. The magnitude of their actions, a dark abyss from which there was no escape. Years later, Jack and Ethan crossed paths one final time. Their reunion was marked not by the camaraderies of their youth, but by the chilling weight of their shared guilt. Their eyes met, two hollow reflections of their monstrous deeds they had committed. There was no forgiveness to be found, only the echoing silence of their shared damnation. The tale of Jack Crawford and Ethan Montgomery remains etched forever in Riverton's history, a grim reminder of the depths to which desperation can drive ordinary men. Their horrifying pact and the devastation they inflicted on their loved ones serve as a bleak warning, a chilling testament to the haunting dance of greed and despair. The town of Riverton continues to heal, forever bearing the scars of the chilling deeds of two of its own. The legacy of Jack and Ethan's betrayal lives on, casting a long shadow over the town, a constant reminder of the darkness that once lurked within its borders.
I've always loved the comforting predictability of living in a small town, every day the same. Until today, when I was walking home from work, I was suddenly struck with a sensation of being watched. Across the road, a man sat inside a gray sedan, smoking and staring directly at me. A shiver went down my spine. I picked up my pace, trying to shake off the unease. But the car started and it began to trail me. Panic bubbled inside. I quickly turned onto Maple Street, praying he'd lose interest. But it kept following. Cursing myself for leaving my phone at home, I looked around for an escape. There was an alleyway up ahead and it beckoned. I darted into the shadows, hiding behind a dumpster. I barely breathed as the headlights swept over the alley before continuing on. Believing he was gone, I made my way towards the wood that led straight home. As I entered the tree line, a chilling hand covered my mouth, and a raspy voice whispered, "Don't scream." It was him. My heart raced, fear threatened to immobilize me. But a memory from an old self-defense class kicked in. Using all my might, I stamped on his foot and I elbowed his stomach. He grunted, loosening his grip just enough, and I broke free. I ran blindly through the woods, the sound of his pursuit close behind. Yet I knew these woods like the back of my hand. Veering left, I reached a familiar creek that streamed directly into my backyard. Emerging from the woods, the lights of my house beckoned. I rushed inside, locking the door behind me, and called the police. They arrived swiftly, apprehending the man who, as I later learned, was linked to numerous unsolved abductions. My escape had not only saved me, but had brought a monster to justice. The incident shook my sense of security, but it also revealed a strength I never knew I had.
From the time I was small, my world was different from others. I saw people not as beings of emotion, but as mechanisms, complex puzzles to be solved. And eventually, I realized that I could dismantle these puzzles, piece by piece. Her name was Lisa. I met her in a coffee shop. Brown hair, blue eyes. A writer, but there was something different about her. A way she looked at people as if she was trying to read their story. I found that interesting. I've been watching her for weeks, observing her routine. The way she bought her morning coffee, always the same. A cappuccino with a shot of caramel. The way she sat at the same corner table every time, the one near the window. The way she scribbled in her notebook. The way she bit her lower lip when she was deep in thought. One day, I sat down at her table. She looked surprised. "May I asked. She nodded. I introduced myself as Mike, a journalist. We talked about writing, about observing life. I watched her light up as she spoke about her novel, about the complexities of human emotions. A week later, we started dating. She was charming, fascinating. Her innocent curiosity about people, her passion for capturing the human spirit in words, it drew me in, but all I could think about was how to take her apart, piece by piece. On our 5th date, I invited her to my house. She agreed. The house was secluded, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. She loved it, said it was serene, perfect for a writer. Little did she know it was perfect for other things too. That night, after dinner, I offered her wine. She accepted. I had slipped something in it, something to make her unconscious. It was a calculated risk, but it worked. She collapsed on the sofa, unconscious. I tied her hands and feet, gagged her mouth. Then I sat across from her, watching as her eyes fluttered open, the confusion, then fear crossing her face. There was something enthralling about it, the raw human emotion. It was what I had been waiting for, to see how she, a writer who captured emotions so elegantly, reacted when faced with her own mortality. It took her 3 days to die. In those days, I watched her, watched the hope slowly drain out of her, watched as she struggled against her bindings, as she screamed through the gag, as she cried, as she begged. And through it all, I took notes, observed her, absorbed her. I dismantled her piece by piece. When it was over, I buried her in the woods behind my house, under the large oak tree. No one would find her. Lisa, the writer who loved capturing human emotions, became a memory, a secret buried deep within the earth. After Lisa, there were others, each one unique, each one a puzzle to solve. And with each, I became more proficient, more effective. It was a game to me, a game of observation and destruction. But there was always something missing, something that kept me craving for more. You see, while I'm able to deconstruct them, while I'm able to study their fear and pain, what I've never been able to understand is their hope. That flicker of hope that remains to their last breath. That hope of being saved, of surviving. That's that one piece of the puzzle I've never been able to dismantle. That's the piece that keeps me going, keeps me hunting, keeps me living.